Yat a Polydinaklaginishia. Welcome to the ICT Newscast. We start in Canada, where wildfire season has already reached historic levels of devastation, and Indigenous communities are on the front lines. Tens of thousands of people have been evacuated from their homes, primarily in prairie provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. In Manitoba, the majority of evacuees are from First Nations. Manitoba Grand Chief Kira Wilson said more needs to be done to protect Native communities.
A number of issues that we are seeing in these emergencies is that we don't have the infrastructure in place when it comes to First Nations communities, and we don't have the proper equipment or tools to be able to manage these emergencies that we're seeing right now.
Tribes in North Dakota want a full federal appeals court to revisit a decision that could diminish Native voting rights in the state. A three-judge panel of the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that individuals or tribes have no standing under the Voting Rights Act to challenge a redistricting map drawn up by the legislature in 2021. A lower court held that the map illegally diluted the voting power of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa and Spirit Lake Nation. The reversal will impact North Dakota's legislative districts. The tribes have asked all 11 appeals court judges in the Eighth Circuit to rehear the case. The ruling of the three judges strays from Supreme Court precedent, says Samantha Blank from the Native American Rights Fund.
This is an extreme opinion. This opinion creates a very sharp conflict with the law and other courts. It goes against decades of common understanding and decades of practice. So the Eighth Circuit is made up of 7 states. So it doesn't just affect Native voters. There are 21 million people in those 7 states, including 13 million eligible voters who can no longer go to court to protect their voting rights.
The loss of Indigenous languages weighs heavily on tribes across Turtle Island. In Wisconsin, Menominee and Ojibwe tribal members are leading efforts to bring their languages back, reviving what was once targeted for erasure. ICT's Erica AEC, in partnership with PBS Wisconsin's Here and Now, has the story.
Trinity Caldwell is learning how to speak Menominee, an Indigenous Native American language.
The ability to talk in the language freely, that to be able to do it now today is a blessing because our elders weren't allowed that freedom.
Caldwell's Native ancestors spoke languages that are now nearly extinct. Adult language learners at the Menominee U Language Campus are on a mission to revitalize their Indigenous language from a past of systematic erasure.
Like even just saying poso wasn't always the most comfortable thing right away.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't ubiquitous. I didn't really hear it a lot.
There
was no meaningful social or community access to the language.
Ron Korn Jr., Director of Revitalization for Menominee U, says their doors opened in 2024 after creating a community of Native language learners online.
That means if you're not looking to be a teacher or be a student, there was no place for you in revitalization.
The adult learners earn a stipend to normalize speaking Menominee on the reservation.
When we go and patronize any of the places here on the reservation or do our business, be it at tribal offices and or anywhere else, that we might see people who have taken their opportunity to join this revitalization and do that same business in the language.
Alexander Medina says he's now exposed to more conversational Menominee vocabulary that his non-native stepfather dissuaded him from learning as a child.
Sometimes it was kind of heavy-handed and kind of bad, and how much he didn't want us to basically just be Menominee, like use res slang. We'd get in trouble.
But now as you're learning the language, does it have an impact on your self-esteem and your identity?
Absolutely. It kind of clicked to me that it's not illegal, it's not banned anymore, so we should do what we can to salvage the culture we have left.
Language revitalization efforts stem from a troubling past.
The boarding school experience was very effective in what it set out to do, which was to kill the Indian, save the man, and every man, woman, and child. And our ancestors, 3, 4 generations over, had this horrific life experience.
For over 60 years, there are at least 11 federal Indian boarding schools across Wisconsin, including 2 here in Menominee Nation in Kashina. These schools were designed to culturally assimilate Native American children into American culture by forcibly removing them from their families and banning them from speaking their native tongue.
The most common thread that you see in conversations about language loss really began in the 19th century, and it often revolves around federal Indian boarding schools and Indian schooling in non-Native institutions.
Sasha Maria Suarez, professor of history and American Indigenous Studies at UW-Madison, says the federal Indian schools across the state were managed by religious institutions, which colonized Native American children and prohibited their language.
What was it to be replaced with?
English. Even if they went into federal Indian boarding schools with no grasp of the English language, that was really the only language they were permitted to speak.
Severed ties to Indigenous languages has been a generational issue for all tribal communities.
For over a century, these kinds of policies that have tried to diminish and disrupt Indigenous language use.
My great-grandma, she spoke Menominee. There were some things that were passed down and some things that weren't, and the language just was not one of them.
Menominee, Ho-Chunk, Oneida, Ojibwe, Stockbridge Munsee, and Potawatomi are some of Wisconsin's Indigenous languages. Suarez says Wisconsin's Indigenous languages did not completely lose their voices.
Those elders who had been to schools, who maintained an awareness of their Indigenous languages, started using education to teach their languages to the next generations. In Bad River, for a new generation of language speakers and singers, Dylan Jennings of the band Bijiki wants Ojibwe traditional sounds to be a part of the modern music scene.
We're, expressing ourselves and making things that we like, but another part of it too was using our platform to normalize our sounds, our style of singing, and our language.
Their song Unbound is about preserving Bad River waters.
We just have to remember to utilize our language and all those tools that we've been given.
And today, all federally recognized Native tribes in Wisconsin offer Indigenous language learning opportunities.
The founding of revitalization efforts in those decades following World War II demonstrates really clearly how boarding schools failed in terms of trying to dismantle and disrupt Indigenous languages.
In 2021, Governor Tony Evers issued an executive order formally apologizing for Wisconsin's role in the Indian boarding schools era. Through state and private funding, language revitalization efforts at Menominee U plan to continue.
I don't have an education beyond high school, but I have a resilient spirit that's willing to give all that it can to see through the revitalization of the language.
For ICT, from the homelands of Menominee Nation, I'm Erica Aisi.
A women-owned business in Minnesota is helping a community heal with herbal remedies, entrepreneurial sport, and a powerful connection to history. Sharice Davids introduces us to Megan Bullbear, the founder of Lakota Made.
It's Nature's Pharmacy, and Megan Bulbear is bringing healing plants from her garden indoors to Lakota Made in Mankato, Minnesota. She makes salves and teas.
This is a big giant hops vine. We got goldenrod in here. There's some rhubarb that's seeded out, and jewelweed, catnip, burdock, plantain, clovers. I mean, there's dandelions. There's all different kinds of plants that are back here, and they just naturally occur back here. In a lot of people's yards, these things just naturally occur here, and everyone just views them as weeds, and they're not sure what they are, so they just mow them down, chop them down, and get rid of them. But the way I grew up is just like all this stuff is useful. You just got to learn how to use it, what it is, what it's for, when to gather it. Even thistles, thistles have a purpose. Poison ivy, I've heard stories, old stories.
Megan started Lakota Made 7 years ago, and it's grown.
It's amazing to see the impact that me making some salves has had. I never, I kind of joked about it, and I still joke about it, that this literally started in my kitchen at my house. It quickly took over. I always thought that it was going to be nothing more than like milk or diaper money. And now it's like we have 11 employees. A huge chunk of our business is online. And so we have shipped to 213 different countries and territories around the world. We have amazing local support here in Mankato. We have people that drive from all over to come to our store. There was a lady from Alaska that rerouted her trip by 10 hours to come to my store.
She's expanded to more than 200 recipes from soap, teas, and salves, and a space for other native producers.
Lakota Made works so well here because there's a market. There's people that come into the store, back home in reservations, there's no access to market. And so being here, I'm a success because of this community. And so I want to make sure all of my other entrepreneur relatives and artist friends have that same access to it. So we're working on, expanding the store, not for just more of our products, but we have a lot of artists that call and come and are featured here today and just need a space to sell their art or their product or, whatever it is. So I'm like, yes, I will make room.
Products for pain relief are popular.
Pain is such, just a universal thing. Which unfortunately is a huge product of the environment that we live in America, where everything's processed and pumped full of chemicals. People of all walks of life experience pain, and they're looking for natural remedies because, whether pharmaceuticals or commercial products didn't work, they're looking for something. It's amazing because all this stuff grows in people's yards, grows along roadsides, it grows everywhere. And I never really understood how disconnected people were from plants and outside until I started this business.
On December 26, 1862, 38 Dakota men were hanged in Mankato, the largest mass execution in the nation's history.
When I first came to Mankato, I came here because my mom double booked herself for Education Day for the powwow. And that's when I learned about it. And I was like, oh my God, nobody talks about this. Nobody really, I didn't know about it growing up. And I would say that I got a pretty good cultural upbringing. I got a lot of stories. I got a lot of old stories. And so coming here, and then getting connected to people and wanting to do things, and eventually moving here, my Lala's like, you're not going to move there. They don't like us. They don't like us. They murdered us. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to try it out. So he was very against it. My store is actually just a few blocks away from the hanging site. I need to be there because I need to help repair this, because so many people would actively drive around Mankato. So many native people would avoid Mankato because they just had that, that hurt in them. Being here and being as involved as I am in the community and helping out all these different organizations, it's making a bigger voice for Indigenous people, because that's a black mark on this town that's there forever. But doing what I've done here in Mankato, there's been so many people, so many Indigenous people, you know, when they go to the cities for conferences or something like that, they actually stop here. They make it a point to let me know that they're stopping. And it's so awesome. And I get so, I get so many people telling me that I've done huge things and all I wanted to do was make some salves. I didn't think making some salves and some teas would be, you know, healing, but it has been for so many people, and I appreciate when people tell me that because I didn't. That, you know, for me, I thought that was healing. I didn't realize how much of a huge impact I would have on the Indigenous community.
For ICT from the homeland of the Dakota Oyate, I'm Shirley Snavy.
Funding for tribal colleges is on the federal chopping block with the Trump administration's new budget proposal threatening deep cuts. Amelia Schaefer spoke with Cheryl Crazybull about what this could mean for Native students and their communities.
Cheryl Crazybull, welcome to the ICT Newscast.
Thank you.
Donald Trump in the fiscal year 2026 budget has proposed cutting tribal college funding by up to 90%. When did you first hear about this?
Well, we expected some cuts to be proposed when the skinny budget was released a few weeks ago, but of course we heard about it as soon as the budget came out. I think that there's a real misunderstanding or a lack of knowledge about the important role that tribal colleges play in education and in communities. So really disappointed because it feels like a fight we shouldn't have to have.
Kevin Aberesk was at Haskell University last week. Let's see what he found out.
I guess the students and the employees as well have been walking on eggshells knowing that we're kind of hanging by a thread out here. Kind of not in the know.
I think it's a ridiculous request to cut off funding because these institutions, they help out a lot of Native Americans that can't really afford bigger colleges right now.
I don't know what's going to happen with our funding. I don't know if we're going to have the same teachers. I don't know if we can carry on. Are we going to lose our accreditation?
Between 10 and 12% of all Native students that go to college go to a tribal college. So that's pretty significant given that you're talking, 34, 35 institutions. And to have that many Native people have access to post-secondary education, which could be everything from a vocational, certificate to a master's, and in the case of one of our institutions, a doctorate. I think that we can really, really see the impact on individual well-being and on their economic security.
And what kind of impact do you think TCUs have on the communities they're in as a whole?
Yeah, so I think there's increasingly evidence that Native communities are also rural communities. So rural communities may or may not, have exclusively American Indian or Alaska Native peoples in them. So if I think of some of the tribal colleges, one I know for sure has about 40% of their student body is non-natives from the surrounding rural communities. So we think we have a social impact, we have an educational impact, we have an economic one. We bring a lot of infrastructure, a lot of employment. So we know that our impact is pretty significant from a rural perspective as well.
If these cuts are to happen, what kind of impact do you think this will have on TCUs?
Well, I think TCUs are extremely at risk. If you are a tribal college, you could be getting 40 to 90% of your funding from federal funds. Tribal colleges are heavily dependent on the operational funds that come from the Bureau of Indian Education. So you could be talking, the loss of faculty, the loss of programs that are supported by those faculty. The value of education is often lost in this debate about funding. The true value of education being both the opening up of your access to, skills that can give you a career pathway but also just the broader knowledge that you have as a human being. So you're more likely to be in better health, to have more skills, to take care of your home. You're more likely to be a responsive citizen. So, I think emphasizing education and the various ways that we can value it and have good outcomes from it is real important right now because I know many in the United States think that education doesn't have a value, but we in the Native community, we know it does. I'm actually at a big convening of tribal colleges right now. So I know that the cuts are on everybody's mind. On the one hand, you're in the institution and you're wondering if that's going to impact your job, the program that you're delivering, of course, you're curious about that. You're a student, you're wondering if your financial aid is going to be intact or because of all the concerns about Pell cuts or if your institution is going to make it through this. So I think so at the same time, we are really good at focusing on how to be responsive and how to take responsibility during times of crisis and finding strategies and ways that we can address it.
Thank you so much for joining me on the ICT Newscast.
Thank you.
U.S. Representative Sharice Davids, who is a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, wants to hear more underrepresented voices in the nation's capital. Stuart Huntington caught up with the Kansas lawmaker to learn more.
Representative Davids, thank you for joining us on the ICT broadcast.
It's good to be here.
You've recently taken on the title of Honorary Chair for the Renew Democracy Foundation, an initiative focused on increasing representation in Washington by placing underrepresented voices in offices on Capitol Hill. Tell us a little bit about Renew Democracy.
Yeah, so the Renew Democracy Foundation is the foundation arm of a coalition that I'm part of called the New Democrat Coalition, which has been around for about 25 years here on the Hill in the House. It's one of the largest coalitions of lawmakers in the U.S. House, and I've been in a couple of different leadership positions over the last 6 years, and I feel so lucky and privileged to get the chance to serve as the honorary chair. And probably the biggest and I think most impactful thing that we'll be doing with the Renew Democracy Foundation is running a fellowship program. It's a 9-month fellowship program, and we're really trying to make sure that people who might otherwise be overlooked for this type of opportunity actually have the chance to come out here to Washington, D.C. There's a stipend. It's 9 months long, and the fellows who go through this get to work on like actually substantive. If they're interested in legislation, they get the chance to do substantive work while also learning leadership skills because they participate in the next gen new dem staff training that happens. And yeah, I'm just really excited about getting the chance to serve as the honorary chair this year.
Is it fair to say that you'd like to see some strong Native candidates apply to be part of this program?
I'm so glad you asked that because yes, I am. I have to say that one of the reasons that I'm so excited and feel so privileged about it is because I feel like I benefited from exactly this type of program. It wasn't this specific program, but it was this type of program where somebody who might not otherwise get the chance to be in a place like Washington D.C. I went through the Pre-Law Summer Institute, which happens out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The American Indian Law Center puts it on, and it's for natives who are about to go to law school. While I was there, I ended up getting encouraged to apply to Cornell for law school, and then I ended up getting in. The first time that the director of the program mentioned applying to Cornell, my first response was, "They're not going to take me." And I think that these types of opportunities, these types of fellowships can help you see that that there's so many opportunities out there, and having just a little bit of encouragement or getting the chance to meet people, which is what happened when I did the White House Fellows program. I got a chance to meet people in the highest decision-making positions in our federal government, and realized how important it is, how lucky I am that I got to do that, but also how important it is to have different voices in the room, and I can tell you that from my perspective, having voices from Indian country in the room, showing up and getting to do something like the Renew Democracy Foundation Fellowship would be, of course, beneficial to the Renew Democracy Foundation, and to any fellows that they're in class with. But also, it will be good for Indian country. It'll be good for tribal communities. It'll be good for whatever it is that these young people do in their future endeavors.
Representative Davids, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.